Dedicated nurse Olivia Parker saves the life of tech mogul James Bennett with emergency CPR during a charity gala. Now he's determined to show her how precious life truly is. Will their worlds collide or combine as he pursues the woman who gave him a second chance? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Olivia Parker's feet ached as she hurried down the hospital corridor, her scrubs wrinkled from the 12-hour shift she had just completed. Her copper-brown hair was pulled back at a messy bun, and dark circles shadowed her green eyes. At 28, she felt twice her age most days. One more shift, she muttered to herself, checking her watch. She had exactly 40 minutes to change and make it across town to her second job, tonight's charity gala where she would be working as medical staff. The hospital was short on funds again, and the administration had practically begged nurses to volunteer for these events. The small stipend hardly seemed worth it, but Olivia needed every dollar she could get. Since her father's stroke 8 months ago, Olivia had become the sole provider for her family. Her mother had quit her job to care for him full-time, and her younger sister Lily was still in nursing school. The medical bills kept piling up despite insurance, and their modest family home in Portland was at risk of foreclosure. "Heading out, Liv?" called Dr. Ramirez as Olivia rushed toward the locker room. "Second job," she replied with a tired smile. "The Heartbridge Foundation Gala. Fancy! Maybe you'll meet a rich doctor who'll sweep you off your feet," he teased. Olivia rolled her eyes. "I've met enough doctors to last a lifetime, thanks." In the locker room, she changed quickly into a simple black dress, professional enough for the event, but nothing that would stand out among the designer gowns she knew would fill the ballroom. She applied a touch of makeup to hide her exhaustion and headed out into the rainy evening. But not arrogant, with dark hair just starting to gray at the temples, and a strong jawline softened by the hint of a smile. "Thank you for that kind introduction," he began, his voice deep and measured. "5 years ago, I lost my younger brother to the same cancer we're fighting against tonight. Michael was just 26 when he died, with his whole life ahead of him." Olivia found herself drawn in by his story, the raw emotion in his voice as he spoke about his brother contrasting with his polished appearance. For a moment, he seemed like a real person rather than just another wealthy donor. Halfway through his speech, Olivia noticed something concerning. Bennett had paused mid-sentence, his hand gripping the podium tightly. A slight grimace crossed his face, almost imperceptible, but Olivia's trained eye caught it immediately. His complexion had taken on a grayish tinge. She moved closer to the stage, alarm bells ringing in her mind. The audience, rapt by his words, hadn't noticed anything amiss. Bennett continued speaking, but his words seemed slightly slurred now. Olivia was already moving through the crowd when she saw him sway slightly. "Excuse me," she murmured, pushing past guests with increasing urgency. On stage, Bennett suddenly stopped speaking. His hand went to his chest, and Olivia broke into a run. She reached the steps to the stage just as his knees buckled, kneeling beside the fallen CEO. "Mr. Bennett?" she called, checking his pulse. It was there, but weak and irregular. "Mr. Bennett, can you hear me?" Preparing and narrating the story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. His eyes fluttered open briefly, unfocused, before rolling back, and then his pulse was gone. "No pulse!" "Starting CPR," Olivia announced, immediately beginning chest compressions. Her training took over completely, counting rhythmically as she pressed down on his chest. "Call 911, she ordered, as the other medical staff reached them. Someone handed her a pocket mask for rescue breaths. The ballroom had fallen silent except for the sound of Olivia counting and the distant wail of approaching sirens. 2 minutes of CPR felt like 2 hours. Sweat beaded on Olivia's forehead as she continued compressions, refusing to give up. "Come on," she whispered between counts. "Stay with us." Just as the paramedics rushed in with a defibrillator, she felt a faint pulse return. Bennett gasped suddenly, his eyes flying open in confusion and panic. They locked onto Olivia's face above him, her hands still on his chest. "You're okay," she told him firmly. "You're going to be okay. The ambulance is here." The paramedics took over, attaching monitors and preparing him for transport. As they lifted him onto the stretcher, Bennett's hand suddenly shot out, grabbing Olivia's wrist. "Your name," he managed to say, his voice barely audible. "Please." "Olivia," she replied, surprised by the intensity in his gaze despite his condition. "Olivia Parker. I'm a nurse." "Olivia," he repeated, before the paramedics whisked him away. The gala dissolved into chaos after that, with guests buzzing about what they'd witnessed. The event coordinator approached Olivia, who was still trying to process what had happened. "That was incredible," the woman said. "You likely saved his life. The foundation will want to recognize your quick action, I'm sure." Olivia shook her head. "I was just doing my job. Anyone with training would have done the same." All she wanted now was to go home, shower, and collapse into bed. Tomorrow's shift would come all too soon. The next morning, exhaustion weighed on Olivia as she arrived at Portland General for her shift. She had barely slept, the image of James Bennett's eyes finding hers in that moment of crisis replaying in her mind. She wondered how he was doing, but knew she would probably never find out. People like him existed in a different world from nurses like her. "There she is, the hero of the hour," called Nurse Martinez as Olivia entered the break room. Olivia froze. "What?" Martinez held up her phone, displaying a news article with the headline, "Tech mogul James Bennett suffers cardiac event at charity gala, saved by quick-thinking nurse." "It's all over the news," Martinez said. "They're saying you saved his life with CPR before the ambulance arrived." Olivia took the phone, scanning the article with growing dismay. There was even a blurry photo of her kneeling beside Bennett on the stage, taken by some gala attendee. "Great," she muttered. "Just what I need. Attention." "Oh, come on," Martinez nudged her. "Embrace your 15 minutes of fame. It's not every day one of us saves a billionaire." "Millionaire," Olivia corrected automatically, then realized how ridiculous that distinction was. "And I was just doing my job." Throughout her shift, Olivia received congratulations from colleagues who had seen the news. By afternoon, she was thoroughly tired of the attention and retreated to the supply closet for a moment of peace while restocking her cart. "Nurse Parker!" A voice interrupted her solitude. She turned to find the head nurse looking uncharacteristically flustered. "There's someone here to see you." "I'm in the middle of my rounds," Olivia replied, confused. It's about last night. The PR department is asking for you in the conference room." The head nurse lowered her voice. "Apparently, Mr. Bennett's representatives are here." Olivia's stomach dropped. Was there some kind of problem? A lawsuit? She couldn't imagine what a wealthy man's legal team would want with her. But experience had taught her that the rich often looked for someone to blame when things went wrong. With a sense of dread, she made her way to the conference room. Inside, she found 3 people in expensive suits sitting at the table. They stood when she entered. "Nurse Parker," a woman with a sleek bob and sharp eyes stepped forward. "I'm Vivian Shaw, Mr. Bennett's chief of staff. These are our legal counsel and PR director." Olivia braced herself. "Is there a problem?" To her surprise, Vivian smiled. "Quite the opposite. Mr. Bennett is recovering well, thanks largely to your intervention. The doctors confirmed that without your immediate CPR, the outcome would have been significantly worse." Relief flooded through Olivia. "I'm glad to hear he's recovering. Mr. Bennett would like to express his gratitude personally," Vivian continued. "He's asked me to extend an invitation for you to visit him at Helios Tower once he's discharged tomorrow." "Oh," Olivia blinked, caught off guard. "That's really not necessary. I was just doing my job." "Nevertheless," he insists. Vivian handed her a business card. "This has my direct number. We can arrange transportation at your convenience." Olivia took the card automatically. "I appreciate the offer, but my schedule is quite full. I work double shifts most days, and my father needs care." "We understand you have responsibilities," Vivian interrupted smoothly. "Mr. Bennett is prepared to make a substantial donation to this hospital in your name, regardless of whether you accept his invitation. However, he was quite adamant about thanking you in person." The PR director leaned forward. "If I may add, Miss Parker, Mr. Bennett rarely takes such a personal interest in anything these days. Your actions seem to have made quite an impression." Olivia hesitated. The mention of a donation to the hospital was difficult to ignore. The pediatric ward desperately needed new equipment, and if her uncomfortable hour with a grateful millionaire could help with that. Up close, Olivia could see the toll his cardiac event had taken, the slight pallor beneath his tan, the careful way he moved, but his eyes were alert and intensely focused on her. "Mr. Bennett," she replied, shaking his offered hand, "I'm glad to see you recovering well, and really I was just doing what I'm trained to do." "James, please," he insisted. "And what you're trained to do kept me alive. The doctors were quite clear about that." He gestured to a seating area with comfortable couches. "Would you join me? Vivian? Could you give us some privacy?" Vivian nodded and disappeared into the elevator, leaving Olivia alone with the tech magnate. She perched on the edge of a couch that probably cost more than her car. "I understand from Vivian that you work double shifts at the hospital," James said, sitting across from her, "and that you have family responsibilities as well." Olivia nodded, wondering how much information his staff had gathered about her. "My father had a stroke last year. My mother cares for him, but I support them financially." "That's a heavy burden for someone so young," he observed. "It's what families do," Olivia replied simply. "We take care of each other." James studied her for a moment. "When my heart stopped beating at that gala, do you know what I thought about?" Olivia shook her head. "Nothing," he said quietly, "because I couldn't think. But when I came back, when I opened my eyes and saw your face above mine, I had absolute clarity for the first time in years. I realized I've been living wrong." "Near-death experiences often trigger that kind of reflection," Olivia said, falling back on her medical training to hide her discomfort with the personal turn of the conversation. "This was more than reflection," James leaned forward. "For 5 years since my brother died, I've been existing, not living. Building my company, accumulating wealth. But for what?" I had no answer until 2 nights ago. He stood and walked to his desk, returning with a folder, which he placed on the coffee table between them. "I wanted to meet you today for 2 reasons," he continued. "First, to thank you properly for saving my life. And second, to offer you something in return." Olivia eyed the folder warily. "That's really not necessary." "Please," James interrupted gently, "just hear me out." He opened the folder to reveal what appeared to be legal documents. "I've established a foundation in my brother's name to provide scholarships for nursing students. I'd like you to be its first recipient, a full scholarship for your sister to complete her nursing degree, and funding for you to pursue any advanced certification or specialization you might want." Olivia stared at the documents, stunned. "How did you know about my sister?" "I asked," James admitted. "I wanted to find a way to help that would actually matter to you." Her mind raced. The scholarship would change Lily's life, removing the financial burden that had been weighing on all of them, and the opportunity for advanced certification. Olivia had always wanted to become a nurse practitioner, but additional education had seemed impossible with their current financial situation. "This is incredibly generous," she said carefully, "but I can't help feeling it's excessive for someone who is just doing their job." James shook his head. "You're looking at this wrong. This isn't payment for services rendered. This is me, with my second chance at life, trying to do something meaningful with the resources I have." He leaned back, a shadow crossing his face. "Do you know what the worst part of nearly dying was? Realizing that if I had died that night, my legacy would have been nothing but a company valuation and a mention in the financial pages. No one who really knew me, no one who would miss the actual person I am." The raw honesty in his voice touched something in Olivia. This wasn't the calculated move of a wealthy man settling a debt. This was someone genuinely grappling with his mortality. "What about your family?" she asked. "My parents died in a car accident when I was in college. After Michael died, it's just been me." He gave a small, sad smile. "Turns out success is a poor companion." Olivia found herself responding to the genuine pain behind his words. "I'm sorry. Losing people you love is hard." "It is," he agreed. "Which is why I admire what you're doing for your family. It takes strength to carry others through hard times." There was a moment of silence between them, a strange connection forming that Olivia couldn't quite define. It wasn't romantic, more like mutual recognition between two people carrying different burdens. "There's one more thing," James said finally. "I'd like to establish a program at your hospital for cardiac care and emergency response training. The board has already approved it. Pending your agreement to consult on the program, it would be paid work, of course, separate from your regular shifts." Olivia raised her eyebrows. You want me to consult? I'm just a floor nurse. You're a floor nurse who knew exactly what to do in a crisis, James countered. That's the kind of practical knowledge this program needs. The opportunity was too good to pass up, not just for her, but for the hospital and future patients. Still, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to his offer. Can I ask you something personal? She ventured. James nodded. Of course. Why me specifically? There are plenty of nurses with my qualifications and experience. What makes you think I'm right for this? He considered her question seriously before answering. When I opened my eyes on that stage and saw you, there was something in your expression, a determination, a refusal to give up, that stayed with me. The doctors told me you continued CPR well past when many would have stopped. I didn't want to lose you, Olivia said simply, then blushed at how that sounded. Any patient, I mean. And that's exactly why it should be you, James said, his eyes never leaving hers. Because you care beyond what's required. Something in his gaze made Olivia's heart beat a little faster. She looked down at the folder, gathering her thoughts. I'll need time to think about this, she said finally. It's a lot to process. Of course. James stood, signaling the end of their meeting. Take all the time you need. And regardless of your decision about the consulting position, the scholarships stand. That's not conditional. As she rose to leave, he added, Would you allow me to show my gratitude in one more way? A dinner, perhaps? There's a new restaurant on the riverfront I've been meaning to try. Olivia hesitated. A professional consultation was one thing, but dinner sounded perilously like a date. I don't think that would be appropriate. As colleagues, then, James amended quickly, to discuss the hospital program. She should say no. There were a dozen reasons why getting personally involved with James Bennett was a bad idea. And yet, one dinner, she found herself agreeing. To discuss the program. The smile that lit up his face was boyish, transforming his features and making him look years younger. I'll have Vivian arrange it. Next week, perhaps? As the elevator doors closed behind her, Olivia let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. What had just happened? She had walked in expecting a brief thank you meeting and walked out with scholarship offers, a consulting position, and a dinner date with one of the wealthiest men in the state. But more unsettling than any of that was the connection she had felt with James Bennett, a man who should have been worlds apart from her, yet somehow understood the weight of responsibility she carried every day. The limousine was waiting to take her home. As Olivia settled into the leather seat, she looked up at Helios Tower gleaming in the afternoon sun and wondered if she had just made the best decision of her life, or the worst mistake. The following week passed in a blur for Olivia. Between her hospital shifts, caring for her father, and helping her sister with study sessions, she barely had time to process what had happened with James Bennett. The folder with the scholarship offers sat on her kitchen table, a tangible reminder of their strange meeting. You still haven't given him an answer? Lily asked one evening as they sat together at the small dining table in Olivia's apartment. At 22, Lily had their mother's gentle features and their father's determination. Liv, this scholarship would change everything for me. For all of us. Olivia sighed, pushing her half-eaten dinner around her plate. I know, it feels like a lot to accept from someone I barely know. He's not asking you to marry him, Lily pointed out. He's offering to fund education for nurses. From what you've told me, it sounds like a genuine attempt to do something meaningful after his near-death experience. That's what makes it complicated, Olivia admitted. If it were just about money, I could say no easily, but there's something about him that seems sincere. Lily studied her sister carefully. Are you worried about the dinner tonight? A little, Olivia confessed. She had finally agreed to meet James at the riverfront restaurant to discuss the hospital program. It's not a date, she added quickly, seeing the gleam in Lily's eye. It's a professional discussion. Of course, Lily agreed, though her smile suggested otherwise. That's why you've changed outfits 3 times. Olivia threw a napkin at her sister, laughing despite her nerves. I just want to look professional. Later that evening, as Olivia stood outside the River's Edge restaurant in her best dress, a deep blue wrap dress she'd splurged on last year for a cousin's wedding, she couldn't deny the flutter of anticipation in her stomach. She told herself it was just nervousness about discussing the hospital program, not about seeing James again. The restaurant was clearly upscale, but not ostentatious, with warm lighting and panoramic views of the Willamette River. Olivia gave James's name to the hostess, who immediately escorted her to a private table on the terrace. James rose as she approached, and Olivia was struck again by how different he looked from the corporate titan the media portrayed. In simple dark slacks and a light blue button-down with no tie, he seemed more approachable, more human. "Olivia," he greeted her, pulling out her chair. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for the invitation," she replied, settling into her seat and taking in the spectacular view. "This place is beautiful." "I'm glad you like it," James said, sitting across from her. "I thought the view might make up for having to spend the evening talking about hospital protocols." Olivia smiled despite herself. "Is that what we're doing? Talking about hospital protocols?" "Among other things," James admitted. "Though I confess, I'm more interested in learning about you than discussing emergency response procedures." A waiter appeared with menus and a wine list. James deferred to Olivia for the wine selection, impressing her with his lack of pretension. "I'm afraid I don't know much about fine wines," she admitted, scanning the extensive list. "Neither do I," James confided with a smile. "My brother was the wine enthusiast in the family. I just drink what tastes good." They settled on a bottle of Pinot Noir, and as they studied their menus, Olivia found herself relaxing. James had a way of making her feel at ease, treating her as an equal rather than someone beneath his social stratum. "So," James said after they had ordered, "have you had a chance to consider the hospital program?" "I have," Olivia nodded, "and I think it has tremendous potential. I've drafted some initial thoughts." She pulled a small notebook from her purse. "I hope you don't mind. I tend to think better on paper." "Not at all." James looked genuinely pleased as she showed him her notes. "These are exactly the kind of practical insights I was hoping for." They spent the next half hour discussing the program, with Olivia outlining training priorities and James asking thoughtful questions. His genuine interest in her expertise surprised her. He listened attentively, taking her suggestions seriously. "You know," he said as their first course arrived, "most of my advisors told me to just write a check to the hospital and be done with it. No one thought actually developing a program was worth my time." "Why is it?" Olivia asked directly. "Worth your time, I mean." James considered the question, taking a sip of wine before answering. "When I was lying in the hospital after my heart attack, I had a lot of time to think. About my life, my priorities." He set down his glass. "I've built a successful company. I have more money than I could spend in several lifetimes. But what good is any of that if it doesn't actually help people? If Michael's death and my own close call have taught me anything, it's that life is precious and unpredictable." "So this is about legacy," Olivia suggested. "Partly," James acknowledged, "but it's also about purpose. For years, my purpose was building Helios. Now, I want something more meaningful." There was a vulnerability in his admission that touched Olivia. This wasn't the calculated response of a corporate executive. This was a man genuinely searching for meaning. "What about you?" James asked, turning the conversation toward her. "What drives you as a nurse?" "It can't be easy, especially with your family responsibilities." Olivia thought about the question. "I became a nurse because I wanted to make a difference in people's lives at their most vulnerable moments. To be the person who helps when everything seems hopeless." She smiled slightly. "It's not always dramatic life-saving moments. Sometimes it's just holding someone's hand when they're scared, or helping a new mother learn to care for her baby, or making sure an elderly patient doesn't feel alone." "That's beautiful," James said quietly. "And rare. Most people don't dedicate their lives to caring for others the way you do." "It's not always a conscious choice," Olivia admitted. "When my father had his stroke, taking care of my family wasn't something I decided to do. It was just what needed to be done." "But you did it," James pointed out. "Many people would have looked for a way out, or at least resented the burden. You embraced it." Olivia felt a blush creeping up her cheeks at his praise. "I'm not perfect. I have moments of frustration and exhaustion like anyone else." "I'm sure you do," James acknowledged. "But that makes your commitment even more admirable." Their main courses arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. As they ate, James shared stories about the early days of Helios Technologies. how he and his brother had started the company in their parents' garage with nothing but an innovative security algorithm and stubborn determination. Michael was the genius programmer, James explained, a fond smile playing across his lips. I was just the business guy who believed in him enough to drop out of my MBA program and bet everything on his idea. That took courage, Olivia observed. Or foolishness, James laughed. There were months when we lived on ramen and slept on office floors, but we believed in what we were building. And now Helios is one of the largest tech companies in the country, Olivia said. A shadow crossed James's face. Yes, but success came with a price. We were so focused on building the company that we barely took time to live. After Michael got sick, he trailed off. You regret not spending more time with him, Olivia finished softly. James nodded. The last year of his life, I was still working 14-hour days, convinced that if we just reached the next milestone, secured the next contract, everything would be better. I thought we had time. The pain in his voice was raw and genuine. Olivia reached across the table on impulse, briefly touching his hand. I'm sorry. James turned his hand to grasp hers for a moment, the contact sending an unexpected warmth through her. Since that night at the gala, I've been thinking about time differently, he said. About what matters. Their eyes met, and Olivia felt something shift between them, a connection deeper than professional courtesy or gratitude. She gently withdrew her hand, suddenly conscious of how personal their conversation had become. What about your dreams? James asked, seeming to sense her slight retreat. Beyond taking care of your family, what does Olivia Parker want for herself? The question caught her off guard. It had been so long since she'd thought about her own dreams, separate from her responsibilities. I'd like to become a nurse practitioner someday, she admitted. Specialize in cardiac care, perhaps. And travel. I've never been outside Oregon except for a school trip to Seattle once. Where would you go first? James asked, genuine interest lighting his eyes. Italy, Olivia answered without hesitation. My grandmother was Italian. She used to tell me stories about the villages along the coast, the food, the people. I've always wanted to see it for myself. You should, James said simply. Life is too short to postpone joy indefinitely. Says the man who built a tech empire before age 40, Olivia teased gently. James laughed, the sound warm and genuine. Touché. Though I'm trying to change that part of myself. As they finished their meal, the conversation flowed easily between them, touching on books they'd read, places James had visited, and Olivia's favorite patients over the years. Despite their different backgrounds, they discovered shared values and complementary perspectives. When the check came, James insisted on paying. This was a business dinner, he reminded her when she reached for her purse. Was it? Olivia asked with a small smile. We spent more time talking about Italian villages than hospital protocols. True, James acknowledged, his eyes holding hers. Maybe next time can be less business and more getting to know each other. The implication was clear, and Olivia felt her pulse quicken. James, I'm not sure that's a good idea. Why not? He asked directly. Because we come from completely different worlds, she said, giving voice to the concern that had been nagging at her all evening. Your life is board meetings and private jets. Mine is hospital shifts and family obligations. Those are circumstances, not who we are, James countered. Tonight I wasn't talking to a hospital shift or family obligations. I was talking to Olivia Parker, a compassionate, intelligent woman who made me laugh and think and feel more alive than I have in years. His words sent a flutter through her chest that had nothing to do with medical training and everything to do with being seen, truly seen, by someone who seemed to value exactly who she was. I've accepted your offer for the scholarship and the consulting position, Olivia said carefully. I don't want to complicate that with whatever this is. Fair enough, James nodded, respecting her boundary. Though I hope you'll reconsider. I'd like to get to know you better, Olivia. As a person, not as a business associate, or the nurse who saved my life. As they walked out of the restaurant, a light rain had begun to fall, casting a glow around the streetlights. James's driver was waiting with an umbrella. "Can we drop you somewhere?" James offered. Olivia shook her head. "I have my car, but thank you for dinner and the conversation." "Thank you for giving me a chance to explain the program," James replied. Then, more softly, "and for everything else." Standing there in the gentle rain, with the lights of the restaurant behind them and the river flowing beside them, Olivia felt a moment of possibility open between them. A path she hadn't anticipated, but couldn't quite dismiss. "Good night, James," she said, stepping back before she could do something impulsive. "Good night, Olivia," he answered, his eyes conveying what words could not. As she drove home, Olivia tried to make sense of her conflicting emotions. James Bennett was unlike anyone she'd ever met. Wealthy and powerful, yes, but also thoughtful, genuine, and surprisingly vulnerable. The connection she felt with him confused and intrigued her in equal measure. By the time she arrived at her apartment, Olivia had convinced herself that nothing would come of their dinner. James would return to his world of corporate leadership, and eventually, his gratitude would fade. The hospital program would proceed, Lily would get her scholarship, and life would return to normal. But the next morning, a delivery arrived at her door. A small, elegantly wrapped package. Inside was a book about the Italian coastline, with a handwritten note. "Dreams deferred are not dreams denied. Thank you for a wonderful evening." James Olivia traced her fingers over his handwriting, a smile tugging at her lips despite her reservations. Perhaps she had been too quick to dismiss the possibility of something between them. The following weeks brought changes Olivia could never have anticipated. The hospital board enthusiastically approved James's cardiac care program, with Olivia appointed as lead consultant. Lily received official notification of her full scholarship, bringing tears to their mother's eyes when they shared the news. And then there was James. Despite her initial reluctance, Olivia found herself drawn into a tentative friendship with him. It began with professional meetings about the hospital program, but gradually expanded to include coffee after meetings, text messages about books they were reading, and eventually, weekend walks along the riverfront. James was careful to respect her boundaries, never pushing for more than she was comfortable giving. But his interest in her life, in her, was unmistakable. He listened intently when she talked about her nursing experiences, asked thoughtful questions about her family, and shared his own struggles with running Helios after his brother's death. "I've been thinking about stepping back," he admitted one Saturday, as they walked through a neighborhood farmer's market. "Not retiring completely, but taking a less hands-on role." "Really?" Olivia asked, surprised. "I thought Helios was your life's work." "It was," James acknowledged, pausing to examine a display of local honey. "But priorities change. I'm realizing there's more to life than quarterly reports and product launches." He purchased a jar of lavender honey, handing it to Olivia with a smile. "Your father likes honey in his tea, right?" The casual thoughtfulness of the gesture, remembering such a small detail about her family, touched Olivia deeply. This was the side of James that confused her the most. Not the wealthy CEO with resources to solve problems with money, but the man who remembered little things, who carried grocery bags to her car, who texted to wish her luck before difficult shifts. "What would you do," she asked as they continued walking, "if you stepped back from Helios?" James considered the question seriously. "Focus more on the foundation's work. Travel, perhaps. Spend time with people who matter." His eyes met hers briefly. "Live more and work less." Something in his tone made Olivia's heart beat faster. Over the weeks, she had become increasingly aware of her growing feelings for James. Feelings she tried to rationalize away as gratitude or admiration, but moments like this made such rationalizations difficult to maintain. "People would miss you at Helios," she said, deflecting slightly. "Some would," James agreed. "Others would be relieved. I haven't been the easiest person to work with since Michael died." "How so?" I became. "Driven, in an unhealthy way," he admitted. "Demanding perfection, pushing everyone as hard as I pushed myself. As if success could somehow fill the void my brother left." "Grief does strange things to us," Olivia said softly, thinking of her own response to her father's stroke, The way she had thrown herself into work and responsibility, leaving little room for processing her own emotions. "It does," James agreed. "But nearly dying put things in perspective. And meeting you," he paused, choosing his words carefully. "You've helped me see what truly matters." Olivia felt a blush rising to her cheeks. "I haven't done anything special." "You've been yourself," James said simply. "Compassionate, dedicated, putting others first without losing your own strength. You live with purpose, Olivia. That's rarer than you might think." They had stopped walking, standing face to face among the bustling market crowd. For a moment, the noise and activity around them seemed to fade away, leaving just the two of them in a bubble of connection. "James," Olivia began, not entirely sure what she wanted to say. Her phone buzzed insistently in her pocket, breaking the moment. It was her mother calling. Her father had fallen and needed help. "I have to go," she said apologetically, already moving toward the parking lot. "Family emergency." "Of course," James nodded. "Can I help? Do you need a ride?" "No, I have my car, but thank you." Olivia hesitated, then impulsively squeezed his hand. "I'll call you later." As she hurried away, Olivia was struck by the realization that James had become someone she thought to call in a crisis, someone whose support she valued and trusted. When had that happened? And what did it mean for the careful boundaries she'd tried to maintain? The question lingered in her mind as she helped settle her father back into bed after his fall. Fortunately, he hadn't been injured, just shaken. As Olivia checked his vital signs, she found herself wishing she could talk to someone about her confusing feelings for James. "You're distracted today," her mother observed as they sat in the kitchen afterward, sharing a cup of tea. "Is everything all right at the hospital?" "The hospital's fine," Olivia assured her. "It's just personal stuff." Her mother studied her face. "This wouldn't have anything to do with that handsome CEO who's been taking up so much of your time lately, would it?" Olivia sighed. "Lily talks too much. She's excited for you," her mother said gently. "We all are. It's been a long time since we've seen you smile so much." "It's complicated, Mom," Olivia admitted. He's not just wealthy. He's from a completely different world. And he's still processing his near-death experience. What if his interest in me is just part of that, some kind of gratitude or life-affirming reaction?" Her mother reached across the table to take her hand. "Olivia, you've always been so careful, taking care of everyone else, making the responsible choice. Maybe it's time to take a chance on something just for yourself." "What if it doesn't work out?" Olivia voiced her deepest fear. "What if I let myself care about him and then discover it was never real to begin with?" "That's the risk we take with any relationship," her mother said wisely. "But from what Lily tells me, this man sees you. The real you, not just the nurse who saved his life." Olivia thought about all the small ways James had shown that he valued her for herself, not her medical skills or what she could do for him, but for who she was as a person. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. "Of course you are." Her mother squeezed her hand. "Love is always scary, especially when it comes in an unexpected package." "I never said anything about love," Olivia protested weakly. Her mother just smiled. "You didn't have to, dear." That night, Olivia couldn't sleep. Her mother's words echoed in her mind as she tossed and turned, thinking about James and the unexpected path her life had taken since that fateful night at the gala. Around midnight, she gave up on sleep and curled up by her bedroom window, watching the distant city lights. Her phone lit up with a text message. "Hope everything is okay with your family. I'm here if you need anything. Machis J." Such a simple message, but it made her smile in the darkness. James had become a constant in her life. His thoughtfulness, his genuine interest in her world, his willingness to share his own vulnerabilities. She found herself typing a response before she could overthink it. "Dad's fine. Just a small fall. Thank you for checking. Still awake?" His reply came almost immediately. "Yes. Too much on my mind." "Like what?" she asked. There was a longer pause before his response. "Life changes. Decisions. You." Olivia's heart skipped a beat. 3 simple words that acknowledged what had been growing between them, something neither had fully articulated. "I've been thinking about you too," she admitted, feeling braver in the quiet darkness of her room than she might have in person. Another pause then. "Have dinner with me tomorrow? Not as colleagues or friends. As a date." Olivia stared at the message. her finger hovering over the keyboard. This was the moment of decision, to maintain the comfortable boundaries of friendship, or to step into unknown territory with a man who lived in a world so different from her own. "Yes," she typed simply, pressing send before she could change her mind. His response came quickly. "I'll pick you up at 7. Sweet dreams, Olivia." She slept better after that, as if making the decision had lifted a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying. The next evening, Olivia spent more time than usual getting ready, finally settling on a burgundy dress she'd bought years ago but rarely had occasion to wear. As she applied a touch of makeup, she tried to quiet the nervous butterflies in her stomach. "It's just dinner," she told her reflection, "with a man you already know." But it wasn't just dinner, and they both knew it. This was a deliberate step toward something more, an acknowledgement of feelings that had been building for weeks. At exactly 7, there was a knock at her door. When Olivia opened it, she found James standing there in a charcoal suit that highlighted his broad shoulders, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes warm with appreciation. "Thank you," Olivia replied, accepting the flowers. "These are lovely. Come in while I put them in water." James stepped into her modest apartment, taking in the simple furnishings and personal touches. Family photos, bookshelves overflowing with medical texts and novels, a hand-knit throw blanket on the couch. "I like your home," he said as she arranged the flowers in a vase. "It feels lived in, warm." "It's nothing fancy," Olivia said, suddenly aware of how different it must be from his penthouse at Helios Tower. "That's what makes it perfect," James replied, his sincerity evident. "It's a reflection of you, practical, beautiful, and genuinely welcoming." The compliment brought a flush to her cheeks. "Where are we going tonight?" she asked, changing the subject. "I thought we'd try something different," James said with a slight smile. "Do you trust me?" The question seemed to carry more weight than the simple words suggested. Olivia studied his face for a moment before nodding. "I do." Outside, instead of the expected limousine, James led her to a classic convertible parked at the curb, a vintage car that spoke of careful restoration rather than flashy wealth. "This was my father's," James explained, opening the passenger door for her. "One of the few things I kept after my parents died. I don't drive it often enough." As they drove through the city and up into the hills overlooking Portland, Olivia felt the evening breeze in her hair and a sense of freedom she hadn't experienced in years. James handled the car with confident ease, occasionally glancing over at her with a smile that made her heart flutter. They turned onto a narrow road that wound higher into the hills, eventually stopping at a private lookout point with a breathtaking view of the city lights spread out below them. "We're here," James announced, parking the car, "at least for the first part of the evening." He opened the trunk and retrieved a picnic basket and blanket, leading Olivia to a flat area with a perfect view. "A picnic?" Olivia asked, surprised and charmed by the unexpected choice. "I thought about taking you to the fanciest restaurant in Portland," James admitted, as he spread the blanket on the grass. "But then I realized that wasn't who we are, or at least, not who I want to be with you." He opened the basket, revealing an assortment of artisanal cheeses, fresh bread, fruit, and a bottle of wine. "I want you to see the real me, Olivia, not the CEO or the public figure, but just James." "I think I've been seeing the real you for a while now," Olivia said softly, settling beside him on the blanket. They ate under the stars, talking about everything and nothing. Childhood memories, dreams for the future, favorite books, and movies. The conversation flowed naturally, punctuated by laughter and moments of comfortable silence as they gazed at the view. "Can I ask you something personal?" Olivia ventured as James poured them each a second glass of wine. "Anything," he replied. "Before your heart attack, were you happy?" "Truly happy." James considered the question thoughtfully. "I was satisfied," he said finally. "I had achieved everything I set out to achieve professionally." "But happy?" He shook his head. "No, I don't think I was. I was just too busy to notice." "And now?" Olivia asked, her voice gentle. James turned to face her fully, his expression serious. "Now I'm learning what happiness actually feels like, and it has very little to do with business success or material things." He reached out, tentatively taking her hand. "It has a lot to do with you, though." Olivia felt her breath catch. "James?" I know it hasn't been long, he continued, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. And I know our circumstances are different, but when I'm with you, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. The simple honesty of his words touched something deep inside Olivia. For weeks, she had been fighting her growing feelings, worried about the differences in their worlds, concerned that his interest stemmed from gratitude rather than genuine connection. But sitting here under the stars, with the city lights twinkling below them, those concerns seemed less important than the truth of what she felt. I feel it too, she admitted, squeezing his hand. And it terrifies me. Why? James asked softly. Because I've spent my whole life being practical, responsible, making safe choices, Olivia explained. And there's nothing practical or safe about falling for someone like you. Someone like me? James raised an eyebrow. A man who could have anyone. Who lives in a world I barely understand, Olivia clarified. What happens when the novelty wears off? When you realize that my life is always going to be hospital shifts and family responsibilities? James was quiet for a moment, considering her words. Then he shifted closer, his eyes holding hers intently. Olivia, I've lived in that world you're talking about for years. The wealth, the power, the status. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that it means nothing without real connection. His voice grew more passionate. Before my heart attack, I was surrounded by people but completely alone. No one who knew me. Not really. No one who cared about James the person rather than James the CEO. He lifted a hand to gently touch her cheek. What you call novelty. Your normal life, your dedication to others, your genuine heart. That's what gives life meaning. That's what I've been missing. The conviction in his voice was impossible to doubt. This wasn't gratitude or fascination with someone different. This was a man who had glimpsed his own mortality and recognized what truly mattered. I'm still scared, Olivia whispered. So am I, James admitted, surprising her. I'm terrified of messing this up, of not being worthy of someone like you. But I'm more afraid of not trying at all. In that moment, with the city spread out below them like a blanket of stars, Olivia made a decision. She leaned forward and kissed him. A gentle, questioning kiss that quickly deepened as James responded, his arms wrapping around her to pull her closer. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, James rested his forehead against hers. I've been wanting to do that for weeks, he confessed. Me too, Olivia admitted with a small laugh. They stayed at the lookout point for hours, talking, sharing occasional kisses, and watching the city lights. It was well past midnight when James finally drove her home, walking her to her door with their fingers intertwined. Can I see you tomorrow? He asked, clearly reluctant to leave. I have an early shift, Olivia replied. But I'm free in the evening. I'll pick you up at the hospital, James suggested. We can get dinner nearby. That would be nice, Olivia agreed, touched by his willingness to accommodate her schedule rather than expecting her to adapt to his. He kissed her goodnight at her door, a lingering kiss full of promise that left Olivia feeling lightheaded with happiness as she watched him walk away. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of connection and discovery. James seamlessly integrated himself into Olivia's life, never pushing her to adapt to his world, but rather finding ways to be part of hers. He brought dinner to her apartment on nights when she was too tired to cook, sat with her father and played chess when she needed to help her mother with errands, and even attended Lily's nursing school presentation, sitting proudly in the audience beside Olivia's family. For her part, Olivia gradually let down the protective walls she had built around her heart. She learned to accept James's generosity not as charity or obligation, but as genuine expressions of care. When he arranged for her father to see a specialist about experimental stroke treatments, she recognized it as his way of using his resources to support what mattered to her. You've changed, Lily observed one afternoon as they sat in a cafe near the nursing school. You seem lighter somehow. Is that a good thing? Olivia asked, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. It's a wonderful thing, Lily assured her. You've been carrying everyone else's burdens for so long. It's nice to see you let someone help carry yours for a change. It was true, Olivia realized. With James in her life, she no longer felt solely responsible for everything, He was a partner in the truest sense, supporting without diminishing her strength, caring without creating dependency. At the hospital, the cardiac care program was flourishing under Olivia's guidance. The additional training had already saved lives, including an elderly patient who had gone into cardiac arrest in the cafeteria, only to be immediately assisted by a newly trained food service worker. "Your program made that possible," the emergency room doctor told Olivia after the patient was stabilized. "Without that immediate response, we would have lost him." Such moments reinforced Olivia's sense of purpose, reminding her that her work mattered in tangible, measurable ways. And James celebrated these successes with her, genuinely proud of the difference she was making. "You should present the program at the National Healthcare Conference," he suggested one evening as they cooked dinner together in her small kitchen. They had fallen into a comfortable routine, sharing domestic tasks with an ease that belied the newness of their relationship. "Me?" Olivia looked up from chopping vegetables, surprised by the suggestion. "I'm not a presenter. I work on the floor." "And that's exactly why you should present," James insisted, stirring the sauce he was preparing. "You understand the practical implementation better than anyone. Plus, other hospitals could benefit from adopting similar programs." His belief in her capabilities was unwavering, gently pushing her to see herself as more than just a floor nurse, as a healthcare leader with valuable insights to share. With his encouragement, Olivia submitted a proposal to the conference committee. When it was accepted, she felt equal parts excitement and terror. "I've never spoken in front of hundreds of people," she confessed to James after receiving the acceptance email. "You'll be brilliant," he assured her. "You're speaking about something you know intimately and care about deeply. That passion will come through." "Will you come with me?" she asked. "To Chicago for the conference?" "Try to stop me," James replied with a smile, kissing her lightly. "I wouldn't miss it for anything." As the conference approached, their relationship continued to deepen. James had indeed begun stepping back from his day-to-day responsibilities at Helios, delegating more to his executive team and focusing increasingly on the foundation's work and on building a life with Olivia. They had their challenges, of course. James's wealth and status occasionally created awkward situations, like when they ran into business associates who clearly couldn't understand what he saw in a simple nurse, or when paparazzi photographed them leaving a restaurant, leading to speculation in the business press about the mystery woman in the reclusive CEO's life. But they weathered these moments together, finding strength in the genuine connection they shared. James never seemed to care what others thought, and gradually Olivia learned to dismiss the sidelong glances and whispered comments. The night before they were to leave for Chicago, James invited Olivia to dinner at his penthouse, something he had never done before, preferring to spend time in her world rather than pulling her into his. "I thought it was time," he explained as he welcomed her into the spacious apartment with its floor-to-ceiling windows and spectacular views. "You should see where I live, even if I've been spending most of my time at your place." The penthouse was beautiful but surprisingly understated, elegant rather than ostentatious, with comfortable furniture and personal touches that spoke of a home rather than a showplace. Photos of James with his parents and brother held prominent positions, along with books, music, and artwork that reflected his personal tastes. "It's lovely," Olivia said honestly, taking it all in. "More personal than I expected." "What did you expect?" James asked with a smile, guiding her to the balcony where a table was set for dinner. "I don't know," Olivia admitted. "Something more. Corporate, I guess. Less homey." "I spend enough time in corporate environments," James said, pulling out her chair. "My home needs to feel like a sanctuary." As they enjoyed the meal, James had prepared himself, a skill he had been honing under Olivia's occasional guidance. They talked about the upcoming conference and their plans for the trip. "I thought we might stay a few extra days," James suggested casually. "Chicago has some excellent museums, and the symphony is performing that weekend." "That sounds wonderful," Olivia agreed. "I've never been to Chicago." "I know," James smiled. "That's part of why I suggested it. I want to show you places you haven't seen before, Olivia. Not because I want to impress you with fancy trips, but because I love seeing the world through your eyes." The simple sincerity of his statement touched her deeply. This was the essence of James, using his resources not to show off, but to create meaningful experiences and support what mattered. After dinner, they moved to the living room, where a fire crackled in the fireplace despite the mild evening. James seemed slightly nervous, which was unusual for him. "Is everything okay?" Olivia asked, settling beside him on the couch. More than okay, James assured her, taking her hand. But there's something I want to talk to you about. That sounds serious, Olivia remarked, trying to keep her tone light, despite the sudden flutter of anxiety in her chest. It is serious, James acknowledged. He took a deep breath. Olivia, these past months with you have been the happiest of my life. Before I met you, before you literally brought me back to life, I was existing, not living, going through the motions, building wealth and success but missing the point entirely. He shifted to face her more directly. You changed that. You showed me what really matters. Connection, compassion, using what we have to make a difference. You've made me want to be a better man. James, Olivia began, her voice soft with emotion, but he gently squeezed her hand. Please, let me finish. His eyes held hers intently. I know our relationship has moved quickly. I know there are still challenges ahead. Differences in our backgrounds, your family responsibilities, my company. But I also know with absolute certainty that what we have is real and rare and worth fighting for. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Olivia's breath caught as he opened it to reveal a ring. Elegant, but not ostentatious, with a single diamond set among smaller sapphires that matched her eyes. I'm not asking you to abandon your life or your career, James continued, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. I would never want to change the woman I fell in love with. I'm asking if you'll let me be part of that life, completely and permanently. If you'll let me support your dreams the way you've helped me rediscover mine. He took her hand gently. Olivia Parker, will you marry me? Tears welled in Olivia's eyes as she looked at the man before her. Not the wealthy CEO or the grateful patient, but simply James, who had shown her in 1,000 small ways that he loved her for exactly who she was. Are you sure? She asked softly. Your world is so different from mine. I've never been more sure of anything, James replied without hesitation. And they're not different worlds anymore. We've created our own together. The only question is whether you want to make it permanent. Olivia thought about the journey they had taken from that critical moment on the gala stage to this quiet evening in his penthouse. She thought about how James had integrated himself into her family, supporting without taking over. How he valued her work and encouraged her to grow. How he had never once made her feel less than his equal, despite the vast differences in their financial circumstances. Yes, she said, her voice clear and certain despite the tears in her eyes. Yes, I'll marry you. James's face lit up with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Then he pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a tenderness that spoke volumes about the depth of his feelings. I love you, Olivia, he whispered against her lips. More than I ever thought possible. I love you too, she replied, resting her forehead against his. My heart is yours, literally and figuratively. James laughed softly at her medical humor, then grew serious again. I want you to know that I've already spoken with your parents. Not to ask permission. I respect your independence too much for that, but to let them know my intentions and assure them that I understand the importance of your family in your life. The thoughtfulness of the gesture brought fresh tears to Olivia's eyes. What did they say? Your mother hugged me, James smiled. And your father? Well, he looked me in the eye and said that if I ever hurt you, he'd find a way to get out of that wheelchair and make me regret it. Olivia laughed through her tears. That sounds like Dad. Then he said he'd never seen you as happy as you've been these past months. James continued, his voice softening. And that anyone who could bring that kind of joy to his daughter was welcome in their family. They spent the rest of the evening planning not just their trip to Chicago, but the beginnings of their future together. A future that would blend their worlds rather than requiring either to abandon what mattered to them. As they stood on the balcony later, looking out at the city lights that seemed to mirror the stars above, Olivia marveled at the unexpected path her life had taken. 6 months ago, she had been a dedicated but exhausted nurse, carrying the weight of her family's needs alone. Now she stood beside a man who shared that burden, who valued her strength while offering his own, who had quite literally been given a second chance at life and had chosen to spend it with her. "What are you thinking about?" James asked, his arms encircling her from behind. "How sometimes the most unexpected moments change everything," Olivia replied, leaning back against him. "If you hadn't had that heart attack, I believe we would have found each other anyway," James said with quiet certainty. "Some connections are meant to be." As fanciful as it seemed, Olivia found herself agreeing. The statistical probability of their paths crossing might have been infinitesimal, but here they were, two people from different worlds, brought together by crisis, bound together by choice. "Ready for Chicago?" James asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Ready for everything," Olivia replied, turning in his arms to face him. "With you." Chicago greeted them with crisp autumn air and a skyline that took Olivia's breath away. As their private car drove from the airport toward downtown, she pressed her face against the window like an excited child, taking in the unfamiliar architecture and bustling streets. "It's so different from Portland," she marveled. "Everything seems bigger, more imposing?" James suggested, smiling at her enthusiasm. "Alive," Olivia decided. "Like the whole city is humming with energy." James squeezed her hand, the engagement ring sparkling on her finger. They had decided to keep their engagement private until after the conference, wanting to focus on Olivia's presentation without distractions or speculation about their relationship. The hotel James had chosen was elegant without being ostentatious, a historic building beautifully restored with modern amenities. Their suite offered panoramic views of Lake Michigan, its waters shimmering in the morning sunlight. "This is beautiful," Olivia said as she explored the suite, running her fingers over the antique desk by the window. "But much too extravagant for a simple conference." "Nothing about you is simple," James replied, coming to stand behind her at the window. "And this isn't just a conference. It's your debut as a healthcare innovator. Besides," he added, wrapping his arms around her waist, "it's also the beginning of our engagement celebration." Olivia turned in his embrace, her expression suddenly serious. "What if my presentation falls flat? What if no one cares about our little program in Portland?" "That's not possible," James said with absolute conviction. "The program you've built has already saved lives. Its value is undeniable." His unwavering faith in her had become a cornerstone of their relationship. Not blind adoration, but a clear-eyed belief in her capabilities that helped Olivia believe in herself. "I should review my slides again," she said, reluctantly pulling away from his embrace. "After lunch," James countered. "We have reservations at a place overlooking the lake, and then I thought we could take a walk through Millennium Park. Your presentation isn't until tomorrow afternoon. Today is for enjoying the city." The gentle reminder to balance work with pleasure was another gift James had brought to her life. Before him, Olivia would have spent the entire day obsessively preparing, too anxious to appreciate the new city around her. Their lunch was delightful, followed by a leisurely stroll through the park, where they admired the famous Cloudgate sculpture and watched children play in Crown Fountain. As the afternoon waned, they found themselves on the shore of Lake Michigan, the water stretching to the horizon like an inland sea. "It's almost impossible to believe that's not an ocean," Olivia said, gazing out at the vast expanse of water. "I've never seen anything like it." "There's a whole world of wonders I want to show you," James said, his arm around her shoulders. "Italy for your grandmother's villages, perhaps Japan for the cherry blossoms in spring, the northern lights in Norway." "One step at a time," Olivia laughed, though the possibilities he described sent a thrill through her. "Let me get through this presentation first." That evening, they attended the conference welcome reception, where Olivia was introduced to healthcare leaders from across the country. James stayed by her side, supportive but careful not to overshadow her. He was proud when others recognized her as the developer of that innovative cardiac response program in Portland, rather than seeing her as merely his companion. "Dr. Chen from Mayo Clinic wants to discuss implementing a similar program," Olivia told him excitedly as they returned to their suite later that night. "And the director from Chicago Memorial asked if I would consult on their community outreach initiatives." "I told you," James said, his eyes warm with pride. "Your work speaks for itself. I'm just lucky enough to witness it firsthand." The next morning brought a case of nerves as Olivia dressed for her presentation. She had chosen a professional navy blue suit, purchased with James's encouragement when she had protested the expense, that made her feel both confident and authentic. "How do I look?" she asked, turning to James, who was adjusting his tie in the mirror. His eyes softened as he took her in. "Like exactly who you are. A dedicated healthcare professional with important knowledge to share." He crossed the room to kiss her lightly. "You're going to be amazing." The conference hall was more crowded than Olivia had expected, with nearly 300 healthcare professionals filling the seats. As she waited backstage, reviewing her notes one final time, she felt her heart racing with a mixture of fear and anticipation. "Remember to breathe," James said quietly, standing beside her. "And remember why you created this program in the first place. Not for recognition, but to save lives." His words centered her, reminding Olivia of her purpose beyond the nervousness of public speaking. When her name was announced, she squared her shoulders and walked onto the stage with confidence born of conviction. "2 years ago, a cardiac arrest patient arrived in my emergency room," she began, her voice clear and strong. "By the time the ambulance delivered him, it was too late. We lost him despite our best efforts. Not because of any failure in hospital care, but because there had been no immediate response at the scene. No one present knew CPR. No one recognized the early signs of cardiac distress." She paused, making eye contact with various audience members. That patient was a 42-year-old father of 3. His death was preventable, and it changed how I think about cardiac care forever. From that powerful opening, Olivia guided her audience through the development of the Community Response Program. From initial training protocols to implementation challenges, from funding structures to measurable outcomes. She shared specific cases where the program had saved lives, including personal testimonials from survivors displayed on slides. "Healthcare doesn't begin at the hospital doors," she concluded. "It exists wherever people live, work, and gather." By expanding our definition of healthcare providers to include everyday citizens with basic training, we create a network of first responders that can mean the difference between life and death in those critical first minutes of cardiac distress. The applause that followed her presentation was enthusiastic and prolonged. From his seat in the front row, James beamed with pride. As healthcare professionals lined up to ask questions afterward, Olivia handled each inquiry with the confidence of someone who thoroughly understood her subject. "That was extraordinary," James told her when they finally had a moment alone. "You had the entire room captivated." "It felt amazing," Olivia admitted, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Like everything I've worked for was being validated." "Because it was," James replied simply. "You've created something important, Olivia, something that will spread far beyond Portland and save countless lives." The rest of the day brought a flurry of networking opportunities, with healthcare leaders from around the country seeking Olivia out to discuss her program. By evening, she had collected a stack of business cards and invitations to consult at hospitals across the nation. "We should celebrate," James declared as they finally escaped the conference center. "I've made reservations at a special place for dinner." The restaurant turned out to be on the 95th floor of a skyscraper, with breathtaking views of the illuminated city below. As they were shown to a private table by the window, Olivia gasped at the panorama spread before them, a glittering carpet of lights extending to the horizon, with the dark expanse of Lake Michigan reflecting the stars and city glow. "This is incredible," she breathed, taking in the view as James held her chair. "A fitting backdrop for celebrating your success," he replied, taking the seat across from her. As they enjoyed the exquisite meal, Olivia found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment. "6 months ago, I never could have imagined any of this," she said, gesturing to encompass not just the luxurious restaurant, but everything. Her professional recognition, her relationship with James, the expanding horizons of her life. "What did you imagine for yourself?" James asked, genuinely curious. Olivia considered the question. "More of the same, I suppose. Working my shifts, taking care of my family, maybe eventually pursuing additional certification if I could ever save enough." She smiled ruefully. "My dreams have become very practical, very limited." "And now?" James prompted. "Now I'm starting to dream bigger," she admitted. "Not just about places to see or things to do, but about the impact I might have." about creating programs that could change healthcare delivery across the country. James reached across the table to take her hand, his thumb brushing over her engagement ring. That's what I love about you, Olivia. Even with expanded possibilities, your dreams are about making a difference, not just having experiences. After dinner, they walked along the Chicago Riverwalk, the city lights reflecting in the water as boats glided past. The autumn air had a crisp edge that made Olivia grateful for James's arm around her. I've been thinking, James said as they paused to watch a tour boat pass beneath a bridge. About our future together. What about it? Olivia asked, tilting her face up to his. The foundation board met last week, he began. They've approved a major expansion of the cardiac care initiative, based largely on the program you developed in Portland. They want to implement similar programs in 50 cities across the country over the next 3 years. James, that's wonderful, Olivia exclaimed. Think of how many lives could be saved. They want you to lead it, he continued, watching her reaction carefully. As Executive Director of Community Healthcare Initiatives for the Bennett Foundation. Olivia stared at him, stunned. Me? But I'm a floor nurse, not an administrator. I don't have the credentials. You have exactly the credentials that matter, James interrupted gently. Practical experience, innovative thinking, and a genuine commitment to improving care. The board was unanimous after reviewing the data from Portland and watching videos of your training sessions. You recorded my training sessions? Olivia asked, momentarily distracted. James had the grace to look slightly sheepish. For quality assessment purposes, but they ended up being the most compelling argument for your leadership. Olivia's mind raced with the implications of the offer. What would this mean exactly? Would I have to quit nursing? Not necessarily, James explained. The position would involve significant travel to implement programs in different cities, but you could maintain clinical hours in Portland if that's important to you. The foundation would provide whatever additional education or certification you feel would be valuable. He took both her hands in his. This isn't about me trying to change your career, Olivia. It's about recognizing that what you've created deserves to be shared widely, and you're the best person to ensure it's implemented effectively. I don't know what to say, Olivia admitted, overwhelmed by the opportunity. It's an incredible offer, but such a big change. You don't have to decide tonight, James assured her, or even this month. The board understands this would be a significant transition, but I wanted you to know that the option exists, that your work has opened doors you might not have imagined. As they continued their walk, Olivia's mind buzzed with possibilities. Leading a national initiative would be challenging but deeply meaningful work, a chance to multiply the impact she had seen in Portland across the entire country. What about my family? She asked, voicing one of her primary concerns. Dad still needs care and Lily might need guidance as she finishes school. We'd make it work, James said simply. Your family is important to me too, Olivia. Whatever support they need, whether it's additional home care for your father or mentorship for Lily, we can arrange it. His easy inclusion of her family's needs in their planning touched Olivia deeply. From the beginning, James had understood that they were a package deal, that loving her meant embracing her responsibilities as well. I'll think about it, she promised, leaning against him as they walked. It's a lot to process. That's all I ask, James replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. Now, shall we enjoy our last night in Chicago? I thought perhaps a carriage ride through the historic district. The next 3 days were a whirlwind of exploration and enjoyment. With the conference concluded successfully, Olivia and James were free to experience Chicago as tourists, visiting museums, attending a symphony performance, taking an architectural boat tour, and sampling the city's famous deep dish pizza. On their final night, they attended a performance of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, with Olivia wearing an elegant black dress James had surprised her with that afternoon. You didn't need to buy me anything else, she had protested when he presented the gift box. You've already done so much. I wanted you to have something special for tonight, James had replied. Something that makes you feel as beautiful as I see you. The dress fit perfectly, highlighting her graceful shoulders and falling in soft folds to just below her knees. As they took their seats in the private box James had reserved, Olivia felt a moment of surreality. This glamorous evening so far removed from her usual life of hospital scrubs and practical concerns. Yet, as the orchestra began to play, Olivia found herself fully present in the moment, the magnificent music washing over her. James's hand found hers in the dimmed light, their fingers intertwining naturally. "Happy?" he whispered during a brief pause between movements. Olivia nodded, too moved by the music and the moment to speak. Happiness seemed too small a word for what she felt. This profound sense of rightness, of being exactly where she was meant to be, with exactly the right person. Their return to Portland brought a gentle re-entry to reality. James drove them from the airport to Olivia's apartment, where her family was waiting to welcome them home and hear about the conference. "My daughter, the healthcare innovator," Olivia's mother said proudly, embracing her. "We watched the live stream of your presentation. You were magnificent." "You watched?" Olivia asked, surprised and touched. "James arranged it," her father explained from his wheelchair. "Had it displayed on the big screen at the rehab center so everyone could see." The nurses were mighty impressed. Olivia turned to James, who shrugged modestly. "I thought they should see what you accomplished." Later, after dinner with her family, James and Olivia sat on the small balcony of her apartment, looking out at the familiar Portland skyline. The city seemed somehow smaller after Chicago, yet no less dear. "It's good to be home," Olivia said, leaning against James's shoulder. "Yes, it is," he agreed, his arm comfortable around her waist. "Though I've been thinking that perhaps we should consider finding a home together, something that belongs to both of us." The suggestion was typical of James, thoughtful and sensitive to her feelings. He wasn't asking her to move into his penthouse or assuming they would live according to his established patterns. Instead, he was proposing they create something new together. "I'd like that," Olivia said softly. "Nothing too extravagant, though." James chuckled. "I've noticed you have a thing about extravagance. What would be acceptable to your practical nurse sensibilities?" Olivia considered the question seriously. "Something with character. Enough space for family gatherings. Maybe a garden. I've always wanted to grow vegetables." She paused, then added, "And accessible for Dad's wheelchair so he can visit easily." "That sounds perfect," James said, kissing the top of her head. "We'll start looking whenever you're ready." The following weeks brought a gentle melding of their lives. Olivia continued her hospital shifts while considering the Foundation's offer. James divided his time between Helios Technologies and the Foundation, increasingly delegating day-to-day operations to his executive team to focus on initiatives that aligned with his evolving priorities. They began house hunting, visiting properties throughout Portland and its suburbs. James never pushed for the most expensive options, instead paying close attention to Olivia's reactions and preferences. When they finally found a craftsman-style home with a beautiful garden in a quiet neighborhood, the decision was unanimous. "It needs some work to make it fully accessible," James noted, as they walked through the house for the second time. "But the bones are good, and there's plenty of space for everyone." "I can already imagine Sunday dinners in that dining room," Olivia said, envisioning her family gathered around the long table. "And look at the light in this kitchen." The purchase moved quickly, with James handling the financial aspects while consulting Olivia on every decision. When they received the keys 2 weeks later, they brought her family to see their new home before any renovations began. "This is where your room will be, Dad," Olivia explained, showing her father the spacious first-floor bedroom with attached bathroom. "We're going to widen the doorways and install the same kind of accessible shower you have at home." Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.